The Crystal City was very interesting because even though I was at a distance from it, it's not like I was kind of popped into you know, the street level, I guess, of the Crystal City. That's not how that went. I was at a great distance from it. So maybe, I don't know, maybe 15, 20K from it, let's just say, but it was a beautiful city. Um, and it too is all made of crystal. All the buildings, call them buildings, were made of crystal. They all would shine different tones, different colors. It was extremely peaceful, extremely beautiful. And there was this person that I would call a person, who was there, who walked towards me.
With me today is Heather Mae. Heather, welcome and thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for providing the platform to share my experience.
Well,
Thank you.
I've been very much looking forward to our conversation today. So, I think to get us started, I'm interested in what your life was like growing up, just briefly, and particularly what your point of view was about what happens after we die. And then if you could take us through your NDE after that.
Right. Well, I'm one girl of three boys, brothers, and I was born and raised in Montreal, Canada. And at the time, my parents were very, very young, when they had my brother, anyways. And my father was a police officer at the time. When we were just children. And then after that, he was in forensics. At any rate, I was very close to my great grandmother, and she had passed away, and I was approximately 7.5, I would say. And I had asked him, because we had lost, some family members, and I had asked him, what happens when we die? Like, what happens? And he said, nothing. You live, you die, and that's the end. Oh, and I mean, he was my father, and therefore I took it at absolute face value. And he was very scientific, of course. By then he was more into forensics and whatnot. So that was his take on things, and I went with that for the remainder of my life, until, of course, my NDE, and that changed absolutely everything, because I did not have neither parent had a religious background. My father was in boarding school in Scotland, and my mom did not have, as she was growing up, did not have a religious background either. That was in Canada, Montreal, Quebec, and so there we were, and that was kind of it. And we were raised that way, and very scientific. If you can prove it, and you can, your main senses can see, touch, that was all there was in life. So I had gone with that. And we were, I don't know, your average kind of family. And by time I don't know if you want me to just to go right into the NDE from there, or did you want to hear a little bit more about the family?
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I did the basic things. I graduated high school. I had a secondary education, and eventually, I had a daughter. I was a single mom, and I had gone back to school yet again. So this was graduating from, colleges, universities. It was my third go, because it was hard to get a job and you're in the field. So at any rate, so I went to school third time. And it was not long after I graduated from, it was an intense course. It was a 3.5 year program condensed into 9 months.
Whoa.
It was a brutal, brutal course to take, but I didn't have a whole lot of time, being a single parent, to spend years into school. So that's why I had jumped into that program. And it was all, for uh, government and business and things like that, commercial law at any rate. And so from there, I was involved in a car accident, actually. I was not the driver, I was the passenger. I was also in the car at the time with my daughter, who was in the back seat. And the person who was driving me at the time was my boyfriend, and we were hit head on
Mm.
in we had a very small tiny car, and this was what I call one of those monster boats. I don't know my cars, I'm not a car person, so it was a very old, probably, I don't know, very old, late 70s, maybe early 80s. When you're going 70K through an intersection and you meet up with one of those, you're definitely going to know about it. And so, at any rate, uh, I had a lot of problems that occurred from that car accident. My seatbelt actually wasn't functioning. So I literally ate the dash in a really
Mm.
massive way, ate the dash, and, lots of blood, and yeah, it wasn't good. As time had gone along, I ended up with complications from that. Um, I would say that was latter December, and by a few months later, not that long, I had noticed I had Charlie horse in my leg, and it lasted for months. And I was a very avid cyclist. I did a 10K every single day. So as soon as there wasn't as much snow on the ground, I was cycling. I had seen many doctors about it. I was very concerned about it. We were going to be going on vacation to see my grandparents, who were now in Penticton, British Columbia, Canada, and we were going to be driving. So it's approximately a 16 to 18-hour drive. And this was our little vacation. I was at the time news editor for a newspaper. And so at best, I had 2-week holiday. So that was going to be our 2 weeks. And I saw 9 doctors, and to let them know, like, I'm very concerned about taking this drive. This has been a problem with my leg is very sore, and eventually the last doctor, I had kind of diagnosed myself at that stage, and I had asked them if I had deep vein thrombosis. And they thought that was ridiculous. They laughed. He brought in a colleague, so now I have 2 doctors in the room with me, and they had said, well, if you had deep vein thrombosis, you would be in an extreme amount of pain. And I had said, well, but I am. I am in an extreme amount of pain. And I said to them, well, they said, well, it doesn't seem like you are. And I said, well, what would you like me to do? Cry? I wasn't a crier, right? I wasn't a crybaby. So, we were always taught to, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, more or less, and don't complain. That's how we were raised. And so anyways, they said, no, you probably need a vacation. Go and enjoy your drive, and your time in Penticton and Lower Mainland of British Columbia. And that was the end of it. And I left there feeling nervous, to be honest with you. I felt nervous. I didn't know what to expect. Just that I was unsettled. I was unsettled about the drive. And we left very early the next morning because I saw the doctors on the Friday. So the Saturday we left quite early. It could have been 6 a.m. And by time, I don't know, maybe not quite 1,000K in, I noticed that my leg didn't hurt anymore. Which, after months, I was happy with that, to be quite honest with you, but I didn't know why. And then I thought, well, okay, well, that's good. It doesn't hurt anymore, so that must mean it's better somehow. And so we, continued on our way, saw my grandparents, and by that evening, I wasn't feeling well. And by that, I mean I wasn't feeling well. It was kind of like I was very tired. My chest felt a bit heavy by the next morning, and I couldn't keep, of course, we had all brought, our mountain bikes because that's what we did. and I I found it really hard to even keep up to my daughter, who at the time was 7. So that was very strange to me. I thought that perhaps, I don't know, I actually said perhaps I have a chest infection that, I suddenly got sick or something. That's what I thought it was all about, to be honest with you. Um, we didn't stay at my grandparents for too long. Basically, the second day, we drove down to Langley, British Columbia, which is getting down into the lower mainland, closer to Vancouver, Canada, and to visit my father. And we actually met my father at a historical park down there. And even though I felt horrendous, I actually did the walk of the park, more or less for my father, and my daughter did that evening. When I was at my father's, I had a lot of pain actually in my chest area, my upper chest. I didn't really know what that was about either. It was concerning, definitely. Even though I had been, had pneumonia or whatever in the past, it was very different than that. So I couldn't quite place it. And the next day was a dinner. We were supposed to meet friends who had recently moved to Vancouver at a dinner party. And my at now at this stage is my fiance. Okay, so he had gone to the friend's place. I had gone to see aunts and uncles that I hadn't seen since I was quite young, and of course to introduce them to my daughter. And I really felt horrible at that stage. But again, I didn't say a word. I just kind of did the visit, even though I was quiet. That side of the family didn't know me all that well, so nobody questioned that I was so quiet. Nobody questioned it. And my father took my daughter, of course, for the evening. He dropped me off at the dinner party in Vancouver. And, I felt so awful by that stage. I was not eating. People were drinking. I was not drinking. I was not, smoking. I was not doing anything, actually. I was just kind of a lump in the chair on the patio. you know, uh, I had the hostess had asked me, so, oh, did you not like, the entrees? Did you not like the dinner, blah, blah, and I said, actually, I'm not feeling that well, so I'm really sorry. I'm sure it was delicious. And then I sat there for a little while. I did say to my fiance at the time, I said, I really am not feeling well. I would like to leave early. And of course, he didn't want to leave early. And I sat for a little bit longer. I can't tell you how long. I ended up going to the washroom. I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, Heather, if you do not do something, if you do not call attention to yourself, you're going to die, because it was such a deep knowing. It's a real intense feeling when you're truly in trouble. You're having a health crisis. It really is a very deep feeling. And so I kind of stood there and thought, I have to call an ambulance. Yeah, I have to get out of here and call an ambulance. So I had walked into the den. I had turned the music down to everyone's surprise, and I yelled out, I need an ambulance. Somebody call an ambulance. Well, everyone's between latter 20s and maybe 31 at best. We're all young, and they all kind of, their mouths gaped open. They all kind of looked at me and said, really? And I said, yes, really, I need an ambulance. I need an ambulance right now. And so one guy had picked up the phone to call an ambulance. My fiance at the time had said, no, no, I'll drive her. And I
Oh,
kind of looked at him. I said, you've never been in this region. And no, no, let's just call the ambulance. And he decided, no, that was best. And I really wasn't in the position to be arguing with anybody. They kind of scooped me up and stuffed me in the car. And he took off. By this stage, things really were not good. Um, it's kind of choppy, the memory. So I don't know if I was in and out of consciousness, But at one stage when I woke up, we had crossed the border to the States, to the
Oh,
US, because that's how close Vancouver is to, the US. So, anyways, and I absolutely couldn't believe it. But by then I was already losing senses, so I was not able to communicate. And so he went around and back to come back over the border into Canada. There were washrooms up ahead, so I had pointed to them, and he parked in front of them. I got out of the vehicle and kind of, hand over hand, through the side of the car or whatnot until I got to the door of the washroom, and I got into there, and it was a very long counter down one side with many sinks, and I kind of slid my way all along that until I was at the back of the wall and kind of nuzzled myself in between the sink counters and the hand dryer. That's what was holding me up. And I kind of stood there and I thought, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do. And this elderly lady came in, she really was quite lovely. She had come in and she was talking because I could see her mouth moving. I could hear her. I had lost hearing. So I had lost hearing and my ability to speak. And she had come over to me. She said something, don't know what. And she had felt my forehead and she had felt here. And I thought, oh gosh, she thinks I'm sick. No, I'm not sick. And I'm screaming in my head, I need help. I need an ambulance. I need help. I need an ambulance. And then she went, into the washer, came out and was at the sinks. And she said something to me yet again. But by this stage, I'm pretty slumpy, And she said something, and I thought, oh my gosh, maybe she even thinks I'm high on something. I really need help. So I'm screaming in my head, get help, get help. But, nobody could hear me. She left. I don't know how long I was standing there, to be quite frank with you. I have absolutely no idea. Um, I was like, well, Heather, what are you going to do? You're going to stay in this, public washroom. This is ridiculous. And so I slid along the counter until I got to the door because I had splashed water on my face prior to that. Slid across the thing, got to the door, got into the vehicle, and obviously I had been gone long because all I could see was, he was mad that I took so long. So who knows
oh
how long I
goodness.
was in there, coming again across the border. Of course, the border patrol. I was really hoping that he would notice I was really unwell. That was my hope. He had pointed at me. I kind of turned. I was actually feeling a lot of doom by this time, a lot of doom. I sort of looked at him. He pointed at me. I don't know what my now ex, but I don't know what he actually said, because he had waved us on through. And I thought, oh, oh my God, I'm done for here. Um, there's no hope. There's no help. There's nothing now. I really strongly felt I was going to die. And we, I don't know, maybe I passed out again for a little while. I woke up again it was an exit, and it was a really dark highway. So I'm not really sure where we were at the time, and he took the exit really fast. He was in a sports car. So he took that quite quickly, and it made me kind of slosh around in my seat a bit, which created absolute intense pain. Intense pain all in my upper chest, right through to my back. Pain like, they say 0 to 10. Well, it was an 11. It was past the 10. And so we went up the curve and around, and I screamed in my head. And I knew then that I was going to die. You know when you're going to die. When I call it when your number's been called, you just know it. I had a moment, and it wasn't even a long moment, of being terrified, afraid that I was going to die. But that was quickly overcome by uh, this. It's like an intense serenity that comes across. It's an intense serenity that you know there's no way out of something. You surrender, you know? And so that's what was then happening. But from the back came this, it was a blackness, but it sort of came from the top and the back, and it's came slowly over me. But there was a noise with it. It was a very, it's hard to explain because, I didn't have that sense, but yet I could hear. It was like a whoosh kind of sound as it was coming over. I had slumped forward in the vehicle because I could see all the leather design in the dash of the vehicle. And that was very confusing to me as the blackness is coming, came very slowly, came very, very slowly. I was confused with I could see the dash ever so closely, and I kept looking at it. That's very bizarre. Why am I looking at the dash so closely? Had no idea. Um, until eventually, with the blackness, and it's a blacker than black. It's very dark. Eventually, I could only see out of a tiny little pinhole. That was the interior of the vehicle, which I was still at the dash. So how long was I staring at the dash? Don't know. I figured at some point, my fiance had grabbed me and pulled me back. I don't know. He said he did. He said he did. So from there, I found myself in this space, in this place that I have no real words for. So it's why I call it the abyss, because I don't know what else to call it. And I never did back then either. It was uh, so incredibly pitch black. It would be as though you were underground and there were no windows and somebody put you underground. You couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. Now, I was always a curious type of person. So as I was there and floating, because it's a floating sensation, it's very, very comfortable. It's like climate control perfect. It's not too hot, not too cold. It's very comfortable. It's actually peaceful. I found it very peaceful. I know some people said, "How can you find anything so peaceful if you're in blackness and can't see anything?" It's it was the ambiance of it, that you could really get that sense of peace and being perfectly suspended. You know, uh, it was actually truly, if anybody who's ever floated in a lake, completely by themselves, no people whatsoever, very, very quiet. The water, usually by early evening or very, very early morning, it's like a mirror. It's very quiet and calm. And it felt like I was floating in something like that. I can liken it to that, with your eyes closed and very, very comfortable, peaceful, tranquil. That's how the abyss felt for me. And what was interesting about it, because I'm a curious type of person, and you bring your personality with you. I did not know I was dead, to be honest with you. I did not know what was happening, to be quite frank with you. I just knew I was in this place, and now I want to test it out. How dark is it here? And so I did put my hand in front of my face. I could not see my hand. I know people would say, "Well, how the heck would you be expecting to look at your hand?" Well, because you feel like yourself and you have, I guess it's like an energy body, And so I felt like me. I had my odd sense of humor, and I was me, and in every sense of being myself. And then way off in the distance was this, it was like a tiny little spark of light. I guess it would be like, I don't know, out away from light noise, and the sky is very, very black, and it's almost a completely starless night, but you can see one star, really light, bright. So it was like that. And so I had looked at it, and it had looked actually to be very far in the distance. And I thought, oh, well, how could you miss it? Because everything else is pure blackness. So of course it's going to catch your attention. It did catch mine. And I had watched it for a while and it started to get closer to me, which I thought was interesting. I watched it. It got bigger and bigger and bigger until I realized it's like a funnel or like a tunnel, a vortex of some kind. However, the widest part was coming towards me, you know? And next thing I knew, just like that, I was in it. Now, this is the part that I started to really start freaking out because I didn't know what it was. And it's a sensation of rising, being slowly kind of sucked up, sort of. Not too fast. It was just, what do you want to call it? Moderate speed. It wasn't like being in an elevator and going up. It wasn't that sensation. It was just, you knew you were rising up. And that did frighten me because I had stretched my arms out, my legs out, because I wanted to touch the sides to stop myself from going up. And I thought if I could touch the sides, I can get control of this. It's really what I thought, but it actually expanded. So here I am starfishing myself in this vortex tunnel, and it expanded, and now I have to flip out. Now I actually have I'm completely freaking out now. Kind of like, what the hell is this? And what the F blank is going on? And yeah, I was afraid. And so with my fear and my personality in my latter 20s was swearing. I was swear like a trucker, and so that's what I was doing as I'm going up. And when I had looked up, I had noticed it was really bright over up there. But the thing about the tunnel was it had different tones of gray to it. So it wasn't just a solid gray tunnel. It had like dove gray, soft gray, a little bit darker, but it also had sparkly, like lights almost, if you could imagine, whirling with it. And if I wasn't freaking out, I would probably think it was beautiful, but I was freaking out. So, I didn't really want to have any part of it. And then next thing I knew, I found myself quite quickly. It's almost like being deposited into this intense bright light. And by that I mean it's not completely white light, but it's bright. And because I had done this sort of thing, it was so bright that it actually hurt your eyes. It had density to it. It had elements to it. It was white with, if you can just imagine, like sparkly, I don't know, silvers and things like that, as part of it. It was beautiful, but again, I don't know what's happening. If you've been to a soccer game at night, and I mean with the big fields, the big soccer game, they have those really large, bright lights. And if you took all of them at a soccer game and stacked them on top of each other, I don't know, let's say a line of 6 in length and, gosh, I don't know, really high up, and then put a really large crowd of people in front of it. And I'm at a distance from the intensity back there. I'm still surrounded by this. Really, if I paused long enough, it was quite beautiful and it had other elements to it, but I was not sure what was going on and I was frightened, to be honest with you. I started to make out bodies coming from the background of this intense light. And that really started to flip me out. It really did. I began to be frightened by it because by time I could see the shapes of human bodies, all I could think of was who the hell are they? And where am I? And as they came, and there were a good group of them, there could have been even maybe 100 people. There was a lot of people coming from that light. And as they got closer and closer, I was saying, blank the F off, keep the F away, back the F up. I was vile. I was not very nice about the whole thing, to be honest with you. I was freaking out completely, and I didn't know where I was. And the front row, there were other people there that, as a child, I would see pictures of family members, but they had long passed. And some of them I recall from seeing photos, and others I remember in my own childhood life, and they had passed away. And I'm looking and I noticed my Aunt Alice and, my Uncle Dick and my great grandparents, and of course my nanny. And they had all stepped forward. So they're at the most forward of all the group. And I am still confused, frightened, and I told them to F off. I told them to F off. Not very nice. Mm. So, anyways, my great grandmother had stepped more forward. And I said to myself, yeah, it's nannies here. What's this about? Um, she came forward more so and had said to me, Heather, you have died. And I had looked at her and I thought, no, how is that possible? I can't have died. I can't have. I didn't want to accept that, I guess somebody had to tell me because I wasn't figuring it out. You know, I was upset about it actually. I was quite upset about it, and I had fallen to my knees on the floor, which doesn't make sense because where are we to have a floor? But there is one. And I had kind of crumpled there, and I had put my hands in front of my face, and I was sobbing. I didn't want to be dead. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want any part of it. And um, my great grandmother had stepped back. And even though, like, I was very tight with my great grandmother, and she stepped back. I'm still sobbing. I don't want to be dead. But then there was this other element of, I can only liken it to a different frequency came forward, or it was more to the side of me because I was crumpled down. Um, but you could have a sense that it was different. The elements were different. There was more of a slight golden white tone, if that makes sense, uh, to that. And there was more calming that came with that. And I was told that I was going to be okay. And I didn't really have much time to kind of bask in this incredible, loving, accepting, non judgmental energy, because from there I was whisked off somehow to my life review. And I was told that this was my life review, and it was like you're submersed in it. You're completely submersed in it. It's not like watching a video. It's not like going to the movies and having a big screen. You're in it as the observer. You're part of it as the instigator. You're also part of it as the receiver of things that happened in life. So an example would be my grandfather. My grandfather was in the Second World War. Unfortunately, PTSD, and they didn't really get any help at that time, unfortunately. And he became a major alcoholic. And I was 15 and 16, and I would go and find him at the pub, and feed him. To make sure he was eating something and not just drinking everything away, right? So I would arrive there and I'd say, okay, granddad, I'm going to get you some lunch. And he would say, no, no, just, just get me a pint. And I'd say, no, no, we're having something to eat. And so I would order something for him and spend some time with him and his friends from the, wartime, and visit with them. But that came across in the life review, that something so, I don't know, just of kindness really was part of the life review, in the sense of I'm feeling what he's feeling, because the family had, this makes me sad. The family had rejected him, you know,
Mm.
because he was an alcoholic. And sometimes, due to his own trauma, he had saved many people in his life. He had a big steel plate on his head, from saving a bunch of people. And there was just, sorry,
It's okay.
um, his gratitude was big. Yeah, because I was the only one who cared, you know. So, anyways, you feel that you feel their feelings, their emotions of whatever interaction you had, So with my grandfather, it was always that gratitude, grace. Um, and then for myself, at those ages, doing that for him and feeling that as well. And for me, it was just connection. It was to have the connection, right? So I had felt that, and then there was another point in time. I mean, really, truly, I was a pretty easy kid. When your friends as a little child, and your friends, and you could be friends one day and you can be enemies the next. And I had a friend like that, and we would fight. And I mean fist fights, you'd have fist fights in the street, and everything could be just fine hours later, but at the same time, I was experiencing that, and having the understanding on how, like my grandfather, on how energetically we take in. It may be emotions, but there's an energetic component to it, and that stays with you. It stays with you. And so the friend, we had said terrible things to one another as little children. We were in grade 3, and I did see on how there were things that I had said to her that were very damaging, and she held on to them as fact. And I got to see on an energy level on how my words, even coming out of my mouth, had an energetic frequency to them. Your consonants and vowels, to that degree, all had energetic elements to them. And then there's the energy you send out to somebody on top of it, and they receive it. They receive it all. It comes into the body. It can come into the heart center. It all depends. She took it on as, the heart center, and her will center, and took it on as fact, the things that I was saying, and vice versa. I did too. And so I got to see that. I got to see how she included these things as part of her belief structure about herself. And then I was shown that we have a, um, we're given a foundation of a belief structure from our family. And this is historical. It gets passed along generation to generation on, how you fit in the family, where your position is in the family, even how to act within this family, right down to emotional expression or not, everything is within there, and it can be epigenetics as well. And so that's your main foundation. And then the second, I call it a false belief structure, is when we had start adopting things. And we usually start adopting things, societal information, on how to move in the world as a child or as a teen boy, teen girl. School tells us on who we are. A lot of the time, school tells us who we are. And so we'll adopt these things. And then we've got, friends and mentors and things like that. But it was shown to me exactly how that worked. And certainly with my friend, how that actually worked and how she brought into herself that she didn't have value, and I was a component in that to feed her that she didn't have value. And for myself was very similar as well. And then we just kind of packed that off into the belief structure or false belief structure. So that's in the energetic components. There was also because I ended up in a group home. I didn't have any family around me. I ended up in a group home as a teen, continued going to school and whatnot. But there was, unfortunately, a lot of the girls there, because out of a group home, when you age out, if you're lucky, back then you were given maybe $100 and here you go and figure it out. $100 is nothing and you've
Mm.
got a suitcase, you know? And so unfortunately they would turn to, selling themselves in many regards. And so this young girl was about to be doing the same. She was about to age out. And I had said to her, I said, look, you still have time to apply for college. You don't have to do this. This does not have to be. And I guess I had said to her, don't be a statistic. And all this is shown to me in my life review, and that she actually did go to school and she did not end up selling herself. And so we can have a massive impact either way on people, even energetically, or how they absorb the energy and, where they put it or they push it away or they actually absorb it. Um, Kindness can go a long ways. So all these things were shown to me during my life review, including a very, very detailed education on exactly how the body works with energy, how the body functions with energy, right down to DNA, right down to cellular levels, how unprocessed experiences in life could be impacting on an energetic level, and how one can work with that and shift that. So there was a lot of education about that sort of thing. But then there was also the education about contractual understandings, contractual agreements, blueprints, even. So before we even incarnate, it's almost like an interesting gathering happens long before you choose your parents, your siblings, some real fundamental experiences in life. Not all of them, of course, because we're also given free choice, but we do choose the parents. And that I found that helpful because I did wonder why I ended up with kind of neglectful parents. Let's just put it that way, So I did find that beneficial for myself, to have that understanding that you sit with, there's a group and there are elders within this group who are helping you create a life plan. And I found that so incredibly beneficial to know. Did it mean it made it really easy for me to come back and work with that? No, I'm not saying that, but I mean, my whole NDE was an evolution of understanding, and that was really part of the evolution of understanding was that process. Um, so, specific events in my life that I had signed up for, including the stepfather process and, some young childhood things I had agreed to, which is surprising. And I know it's really hard to wrap one's head around that. I was also then shown karma, how the karma works, what karma I came into this lifetime to clear. And that is one of the things that hopefully we experience the evolvement and the self-management and emotional management to actually clear that karma um, with very specific people in the lifetime. Does it always happen? No, but it's one of our aims for it to be that to be completed. Uh, then from there, I was taken to the places of healing. I found these quite interesting, actually. It was there was the pools of healing. Uh, it was the other actually interesting thing was things are made of marble. White marble. I'm talking columns. There's the pools. Very just the frequency of water was interesting on its own. It didn't have color to it like the healing pods that were kind of like crystal sort of dome pods. So when a soul comes in who had a lot of trauma, had a very, very hard lifetime, no matter if it was short or a brutally long time, um, they go to a place of healing. So there's the pools, but there's the energy pods, and they're kind of like crystal, and they glow different colors, and the colors are almost like they're alive, like there's a consciousness with it. It's really quite interesting. Um, did I understand the whole elements around it? No, I didn't, but it was like the colors were alive. Sometimes souls are in there for a very, very long time, depending on the trauma they experienced in the lifetime. Um, then from there, I was shown things like the universe, um, galaxies. I do not have a great understanding of multidimensional experiences. Everything was done quickly, faster than the speed of light, faster than the speed of sound. Everything is like immediate, these immediate downloads. And which is why it can take a very, very long time to understand the NDE overall. Um, Nebulas became one of my big uh, hobbies, I guess we can call it. I joined up with the Hubble Space, program to basically be able to look at all the nebulas. I became quite obsessed with nebulas because it reminded me, believe it or not, of my NDE. That's why I did that. It just reminded me the beautiful um, tones, colors. And then from there, there was a discussion about travel. I did go through some interesting, I only could call it a wormhole because I don't really know what else to call it. It's almost like if you can imagine a tube of plasma, a plasma tube, but as you're going through it in these incredible levels of speed, um, there's flashes of color too. And I was going through one of them, as I don't know, to experience it, I presume. And even it was so fast, it was almost like warp speed, okay, when you see on Star Trek, or Star Wars. And I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to handle the frequency of it. I wasn't even sure if I could handle it. But of course, I could because I mean, I'm not even in my own body, you know what I mean? But that's not how I'm thinking because I haven't completely transitioned. I haven't completely. And so you're very much your personality. And one of the things that I did get to see that I do have a very strong memory of is the Crystal City. The Crystal City was very interesting because even though I was at a distance from it, it's not like I was kind of popped into you know, the street level, I guess, of the Crystal City. That's not how that went. I was at a great distance from it. So maybe, I don't know, maybe 15, 20K from it, let's just say, but it was a beautiful city. Um, and it too is all made of crystal. All the buildings, call them buildings, were made of crystal. They all would shine different tones, different colors. Um, It was extremely peaceful, extremely beautiful. And there was this person, or person that I would call a person, who was there, who walked towards me. I could not see their face, but they had something, if you can imagine, sort of like a scarf thing around their head, but they were, uh, it's not like they had clothes like us, you know. It wasn't quite like that. But at any rate, this person or what have you had given me a big hug. The hug was, it really felt like home. It really felt like home. That's the sense. It does make me cry because it's very welcoming. Yeah. It was very, very welcoming and very, very humbling, and you could really feel that hug is a soulful hug, you know? Um, excuse me. Uh, I didn't stay there very long. I was whisked away from there. It was kind of like giving me a sample, or here, do you remember this? Or it was kind of that feeling to it. From there, I had gone to, I was sat in this chair, and it was a different type of chair, kind of suspended kind of chair. And if you can imagine a bunch of Golden Globe balls, about the size of a good sized basketball, I mean, larger than usual. And these globes, because I was sitting in a chair this way, and there was a long line of them, and they would come in front of me and stop. And then the inside, there was almost like doors would open up, and there'd be like a little money running movie in there. And I would watch that. It was that was the wars that I don't really go into extreme depth with, because I don't want to frighten anybody. Uh, and it's hard to talk about. That's the other part of it. It's very, very hard to talk about. So I'm watching the kind of the evolution of man, in a sense, humans. Um, you know, where you're first fighting with, spears and whatnot, for food and things like that. But then it kind of warps into, you know, the Egyptian Empire, the Roman Empire. Um, uh, then it becomes about power and land and food and that sort of thing, and that people are being murdered for that. Um, it was really hard to watch that because it was children too. Yeah.
Mm.
Went from there to, it was a continuum. It was fires, it was floods, it was mudslides, it was having an incredible environmental um, destruction, in a sense, you know, in the sense of earthquakes and things like that, famine, lots of famine. I started to see all that, and I found that very hard to watch too, because there was really no reason for it. It's not like there's not enough food on the planet, you know what I mean? And so it was unnecessary for a lot of it. Uh, but it was all the civil wars from early to about our time period right now, to about our time period right now. I had then begged the whole thing to stop. I was begging for it to stop. I don't want to see anymore. I don't want to know anymore. I can't watch this. It was uh, it was beyond upsetting. It was beyond upsetting. Yeah. Yeah, it was beyond upsetting. It still is. I don't like to talk about it too much.
Mm.
Yeah. And so basically from there, it was basically about me coming back because I wanted to come back. I didn't want to completely transition over, which I could have. I could have stayed. I could have stayed. But I didn't want to stay, and I had asked to come back. But the I don't know what you want to call it, that higher consciousness, okay, is talking to me telepathically. Everything's telepathically done with communication. And so it was, to be clear, you need to be clear on what you're going back to. You need to be clear that you're going to be in tremendous pain. You need to be clear that health wise, you're going to have a lot of obstacles, and some things will never heal, and some things will. You need to be clear that when you go back, you're going to have a lot of work before you, to heal physically, yes, but to heal psychologically and emotional healing work as well. And that was going to take time, and it was going to be very, very hard. And said I still wanted to come back, even with all that, because over on that other side, I felt that I had enough information with me to bring along and to work with that information that I had obtained, um, to help myself as much as I possibly could. Of course, yes, I mean, I had a lot of doctors with me too, but with that, as soon as we were done with that, and I gave my promise that I would come back and then I would do the work I needed to do, and then I would share. And I would continue to share throughout my life. And just like that, I was back. I was back so incredibly instantly. I was like, oh, boom. And I'm in the hospital. Um, it's kind of fuzzy, to be honest with you, at the hospital because I'm in and out of consciousness. Um, I know I was in the nuclear medicine division because they were trying to figure out what happened with my lungs and everything. I know that they flew in not a cardiologist, a pulmonary specialist from Seattle uh, to come and see me. So I don't know if this doctor was usually in Vancouver and he just happened to be in Seattle. I don't really know. But one of the other times I woke up, I was surrounded by a bunch of doctors. I guess they were talking about me. I woke up and I had smiled, and the pulmonary specialist had said to me, because he grabbed my foot and he said, "Oh my gosh, after all that, she can smile. You can smile." And he said, "Do you have any idea of what a miracle you are?" And I thought, yeah, but I've got a secret. I've got a secret, that's to me was more than being the medical miracle. I thought that it was even more than that. So I was in the hospital for 30 and a half days. I was released on the 31st day in the afternoon. And it took a long time and a lot of work to be doing the healing. It really did. It was life altering. And to even come back with that information, um, was beyond life altering. I mean, yeah, transformative, sure, but in every possible way, because my whole entire belief structure had absolutely shattered, by time I'm out of the tunnel and all this is happening. Of course, the belief structure has nowhere else to go but to shatter. And then it's to be rebuilt, I guess we can call it. Uh, Never mind being adjustments. It had to be, completely new. So, yeah. And yeah, I kind of feel like I'm babbling right now. So, I don't know if you had something to ask me, or if I need to clarify something, I'm open to it. Is that okay?
Yeah, I like to let people speak, Heather. So this is fascinating. Um, what was the? Well, I'm just actually just curious about what was the condition that resulted in you having dying in the first place. So there was something embolism, etc.
Oh,
That was interesting.
yeah. What ended up actually happening is because of the car accident, I ended up with deep vein thrombosis. So I was right about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Unfortunately, I had been ignored by the medical community. So I ended up having to go through this process. I ended up with 9 massive pulmonary emboli when I was in the hospital and at the nuclear division part of the hospital. I don't really know exactly how they made my lungs glow and everything. I don't know how that worked. The two specialists from there had come out to see me because they had said they'd never seen anybody even survive one massive, like one large pulmonary emboli, never mind 9. And of course, even the speculation from the cardiologist was the last one is what got stuck in the heart because it was bigger than the other ones.
Mm.
So, in our understanding of size, I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows the size of a loony coin. So not quite a 50-cent piece, but not a whole lot smaller than that. So there was 9 of those,
That's
basically.
big. So they're clots, right? It's a blood clot.
Clots,
That's
blood
yeah.
clots. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what it was. So I was having all these heart attacks with each one that was passing through. It was a heart attack. So I had 9 heart attacks. Essentially is what it was. They
Mm.
figured um perhaps my survival was really good because of being an avid cyclist for so long. They really couldn't tell me why they thought I survived. They didn't really know what to say. The specialist had said it was going to be something that they were going to study in the medical books, theses, and things like that. Um, that it is possible to survive in rare cases. I was on blood thinners and whatnot for a long
Mm.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did people react when you started to share what happened during your NDE?
No, not good. The first one I tried to share it with was with my mom. Uh, of course, I lost my job, right? I did lose my job because I was, never mind the week prior, and then, over a day, over a month in the hospital, and they couldn't keep my position because my outlook was poor,
Mm.
that I would never work. I would be needing oxygen, canister attached with me forever. That on a cardiologist level, my heart was not good. That my legs would possibly need to be amputated. I mean, it wasn't a rosy outlook. Um, Upon coming home, which took a very long time because I wasn't allowed to fly, certainly had to drive, had to get out every hour to every hour and a half to walk. So it took, never mind 16 to 18 hours, it took days to get back to where we lived. Um, I did tell my mom a tiny bit. So I was the type of person that I would give a little bit of information as testing the waters. And so I would see how the person's doing. So I gave my mom a little bit of information and she bucked it immediately. And she had said, I would recommend you never talk about this to anybody because you will end up in a padded room and you will lose your daughter.
Mm. Gosh.
So that was pretty final for me. All right. So I was, that's it. I didn't say anything to the family. I did try the mother-in-law. Again, did a little test, gave a tiny, tiny piece, and she said, "Don't be ridiculous." She told me not to be ridiculous, and that I probably fainted. And it
Mm.
was like, oh, well, if you were at the hospital, one would know it wasn't fainting because I mean, from chest compression and everything, I had a broken sternum even. So I mean, I had other things going on, right? Um, I did try to tell a couple of friends. Now, remembering some friends were 25, the relatability wasn't there. I ended up losing all my friends basically. They couldn't wrap their heads around even a piece of it. So I stopped talking about it overall. I lost a lot of my friends because my life had changed. I was no longer the main earner in the family. I was no longer had a career. I was no longer out at the pub at the wherever. I was no longer doing any of that stuff, and I had nobody to talk to. I actually worked very quietly and silently to try to work through everything that had happened.
Mm.
Yeah, it wasn't well received, and it wasn't well received even 10 years later, and it wasn't well received 15 years later, I mean, I have, more than 2 decades behind me where I was finally 3.5 months ago, um, approximately 3.5 months ago, maybe we're up to getting up to 4 now, of sharing it for the time
Mm.
first time, so it's quite recent. It's quite recent. Yeah.
So, was there some event that made you decide, okay, I'm ready to share this, and I don't really care what people think, but I'm going to do this? What happened?
Well, I had always quietly in the background worked with people with meditation and how to work with energy, how to, basically give people the skills on how they can do it themselves so that they don't have to rely on people like me. They can learn it for themselves because we all have that ability.
Mm.
And so I was doing that very quietly in the background. I did end up, with other careers. I was in politics. That was my one of my last positions, along with the executive director for senior housing as well. And I was going to run as MP, but I got a very strong no, no, and I felt very called. It's such a knowing that you can't ignore it. You can't ignore it and pretend it's not happening. You can't do that. And so I had to make a decision for also my own well-being, to be honest with you. There's lots of stress involved in politics. And it's not a really healthy place. It was because I went into politics because I really thought I could help. And that's why I did it. I was able to help quite a bit, but not enough. And I felt called to come back to this on a full-time level. And um, I joined Instagram sometime in 2020, and I just started a little bit of sharing. Then I actually went out there and stated that I had NDEs. I had two. One of them was very, very brief and nowhere near to the extent. And I was really stepping out. And to be honest with you, sure, did I have fear about that? Sure. Was I concerned about that? Yes. I knew that anybody who knew me in the past as being involved in the political arena would probably run the other way. And they did, you know. But I thought it's time. It's time. People really started to tell me they wanted to know what's out there and they want to know more. And people are more open now than they were even 15, 10 years ago.
Mm.
uh, there's been a real shift in consciousness, I find, in the past 10, even 5 years. There's been a big shift in consciousness, and people are much more open as explorers, as people wanting to work with themselves and kind of get a PhD understanding in themselves and how energy works. Science has come along, thank goodness, to even share that we have a biofield around us. So it was really, really time. I actually dropped everything, stepped away from white collar altogether, 100%, and decided to do this on a full time basis by time it was around 2021, but definitely by 2022, again, full time. Now, I always did part time, sometimes kind of full time, in the past, but not to the level that, not to the degree that I'm able to now.
Mm,
Yeah, I can help more now, because people, one, are more willing, and two, because where social media is.
mm.
Let's face it, 20 years ago, it wasn't there. I was doing things on Pal Talk, which was an audio network where people could talk to one another. And I was doing it on Pal Talk.
Wow, that's an old one.
In Yeah, that is an old one, right? So that was in 2000 to 2009, 10. I was there doing that
Mm.
work there. Yeah.
So, tell us about, well, what are you doing then? So, how do people get in touch with you, and what are the things that you're doing to help people along that's come about as since you're in you?
Mm. Well, I do I do energy readings. So I, will see the auric field. I will let people know what's in the auric field, and what is your energy signature basically, and what stories does it have to tell.
Mm,
um, and nothing is ever to shock, nothing is ever to create emotional distress. I connect with somebody's higher self, and I ask basically, what is it that they are prepared to hear on a conscious level? What are they prepared to understand on a conscious level? And so it's all about, not shocking anybody. And so I draw it out. It's actually hand drawn. Everything's hand drawn. I could probably show you one. Hang on,
yeah,
because this was from
I'm
earlier.
intrigued.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what it is. And all this on the sides here is all writing all about everything I can see in here.
Hmm. So you see that
Right.
like
So
it's
that
Zoom, or is it only in person? Yep.
No, I do this before I see you.
Okay.
So I know it's kind of hard to wrap one's head around. It takes I only do 3 a week. The other times I'm teaching how to move energy, shift energy, and how to ground, and how to connect with divine source and the all. How to work with your chakras. Just there's a lot of things that I work with, how to understand your patterns and belief structures, and how to shift them out so that you can experience more pleasant life, I guess is how we can call it, so that you're not stuck in old patterns. At any rate, so when I do this, I am doing it sometimes days prior to meeting somebody on Zoom. It takes time. This here alone took over 2 hours to do. And so to be online on Zoom and to write and to color it in, I try to show the auric field as best as I possibly can. It's very, very hard to replicate those colors that I'm seeing. I mean, we don't even have the capacity to really share that in a real visual way. And then I meet the person on Zoom, and I share with them exactly, what's there. Sometimes it's a trauma that they experienced. Sometimes I'm even shown what age it was, what was happening, how a belief structure first started, what the nucleus of it, what's the core, and then how many experiences one had in life to further develop that belief structure. Um, that actually is working against them in life right now.
Mm,
So there's that. It also, shares with people what's in their auric field, meaning frequency of tone. So if usually the lighter the color, the higher the frequency. It's usually how it is. If there's sticky things in there that are unprocessed experiences, it's going to show up as well. And we will talk about that also. Beyond that, so people will choose an energy reading because they're curious, and other people will choose an energy reading because they really want to work and understand themselves better and what they need to work on. Other people will connect with me to, they want to learn how to work with energy. And usually the thing I'll recommend is how to clear yourself as a vessel. And so what I do is I connect with them on Zoom, and I actually connect with you. And so I have channeled what frequency is best for you to work with right now in where you are currently in life. And I help call in, I share with you about the intent, how to call in that energy, and then I watch it as it comes in. So if there's an area within your body that it's not actually circulating very well, I then go in and have a really good clear look as to um, what's happening, what's going on, and what is it connected to as to why it's not circulating very well. And then from there, we'll work together. Just, I, I would say, hey, Rod, you have in here this belief structure that has created whatever blank in your life. It's a false belief system, it's a false belief structure, and how you're seeing yourself as, a non-creative or whatever it happens to be. It can also be it's creating, gastral issues. And so I'll ask them if they can connect with that. Sometimes they can, and sometimes they can't. And so I'll, work with them and say, okay, well, we're going to work together now. We're going to clear this area up and get the, energy circulating. And sometimes it's because there's IBS there or Crohn's disease, or it could be all kinds of things. And, move the energy better and then keep moving up all throughout the entire body. The work that I do with people and walking them through the meditations, it's on a deep level, like it's down to cellular levels. So you want to bring the whole entire physical body in unison when you're raising the frequency and you're clearing the main energetic channels. And if you bring in too high of a frequency, it's actually not going to do you any good because you can't hold the frequency. If the frequency is too low, it's also not going to do you any good because it's not going to clear those levels up, So um, and it's also important not to do too much too soon. And I realize a lot of people say, okay, well, I've done this now, so let's do something else. And it's like, well, actually, now you have to integrate this. So it's not, I'm doing this for 1 week and now I'm going to be overdoing this, but you haven't walked it yet. You haven't integrated into your understanding and how you move in life. And that takes time, and nothing is to be rushed. And so I'll do follow-ups with people. I'll see how the energy is moving. Sometimes the frequency changes, and then I'll let them know, and then they'll continue with that. Sometimes it's a couple of months that they're doing that type of work.
Mm.
And then, then they realize, oh, I've got this belief structure here. And then so we'll work with a belief structure to move that out, So yeah, it's it's all really about just sharing the information and giving somebody the tools to help themselves. That's really what it is all about. Yeah.
Heather, I've just got two more questions left. So that I know this is difficult, the sort of the wars and things that you saw, but I'm curious about
Yeah.
did you get a better sense of why you were shown that? Have you had a better sense of why that was over time? It just seems like you were shown something fairly brutal that was upsetting, but then what was the purpose behind that?
Well, I always said this because I really do believe it. I'm sure they were going to get to the good stuff, but I actually halted I begged for the whole thing to stop.
Right.
I kind of I kind of wished I didn't, because I was really struggling to watch that. Uh, but there's also an other side to it, to let people know that globally, we are really all part of one another energetically. Globally, we really are one family, and we are so incredibly connected. And I think part of that was to have that understanding on how much that we have forgotten our own empowerment as people. And it just doesn't mean in your own little circle. I mean, it just means globally how powerful we are as people, and all this unnecessary brutality, unnecessary. placing everybody in boxes. May it be because due to color, may it be due to belief structure, may it be due to cultural, may it be to religion, whatever it happens to be to regards to is absolutely unnecessary, because overall we're a global family. Overall, that's really what we are, and to have to basically we have just raped and pillaged the earth. That was also part of it. Yeah, that was also part of it as well. Once you're removing trees, well, of course you're going to be having mudslides, right? This is part of that process, unfortunately. Yeah. So other than that, I have always felt that had I been able to endure it, I probably would have been shown the good stuff that was around the corner, for all I know. But
Mm.
I halted it, absolutely halted it. And I do want to share that even going through the life review, because I don't think I got this out very well, there is no, you're not condemned. You're not, oh, that was really bad of you. You really shouldn't have done that. There's none of that. It's basically everything that you're shown in the life review is to elevate your understanding, to give the knowledge and the understanding on a soul level, to understand really truly completely, because of the emotionally, there's nothing like that on the other side. We don't have an ebb and flow. In this life we have an absolute ebb and flow, and it's all about really self-management on how we're going to be handling things and handling our responses to things. And yes, and sometimes life is really, really brutal and harsh, and depending upon where you came in.
Have you got anything final that you wanted to leave people with before we wrap up today, Heather?
I think that if anything, it would be to have the understanding that to have all those divisions of one another, um, is actually halting our forward movement. And not only that, it's fundamentally part of that belief structure that we've been fed for a long time about one another. And it's false, because overall, we are all humans on this planet. There's not a specific group of humans from the other humans. We're all the same,
Mm.
and we may have different beliefs and whatnot, but overall, to be kind to one another, because that is the ripple effect. And the ripple effect, it broadcasts it outward. And when we're kind to somebody else, usually they're kind back, and you can take that to other places as well. And so remember to be kind to yourself and to one another, and that we are a global family. We are all energetically connected,
Mm.
always.
That's a great message. Heather, thank you so much for being my guest today. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk.
Well, thank you very much, Rod. I just wanted to say thank you to you for providing a platform, for your viewers. I hope that even if it helps one person to help them in any way, then that's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
it makes it worth it,
Thank
doesn't
you.
it? Even if it's just one.
Yeah. Yeah, you bet. You bet.